Hi, my name is Dan Hopman, and I'm one of your instructional coaches in the Palmdale School District. And we're going to take a review of the Zoom settings and how you can change those while you're in meeting. So just to kind of take a look at our agenda, we're going to log into zoom.us, which is the Zoom website, review those settings, then go to an online meeting and review on-the-fly settings. All right, in beginning with our looking at settings to keep our Zoom meetings secure, the first place we're going to go is to go to zoom.us, and I'm going to sign in with my Google account. Now you can see I'm in my Zoom. I'm going to go into settings, and now I'm going to take a look at my global settings for Zoom. So the first thing we're going to look at is security. So security, we want that waiting room turned on. That's really important when we talk about Zoom. We want to make sure our kids head into that waiting room before we start. Now, with the waiting room options, here's where we want to make sure that kids are changing their name before they come into the meeting. Now, they could come into the waiting room with whatever name they have, but if they don't change their name, don't let them in. Make that a requirement for joining your session. So in order to give them that message, what you would do is go to this customized waiting room. If you notice, I have a custom message that pops up whenever I have meetings with teachers. So if I edit that, I can say, please change your name to display before entering. And then that way they will see this. And then at the bottom, you can also put in something to the effect of, you won't be let into our session until you have your name changed. Now remember, students have that option as they're entering in the class to add their name in correctly. And we'll talk a little bit about how you can do that on the fly as well. When you're ready for that, click that check mark. And when you're done with this video, hit close, hit close. Now, when you scroll down after the waiting room, requiring a passcode, that's up to you. I think it's a good idea, but remember, it's another barrier to get kids into your meetings. So you can have that turned on or off. Require a passcode for instant meetings, again, on or off. Require a passcode for personal meetings. You don't have to set up a room every time. You have a personal meeting room you can do. Again, on or off is up to you. Embedding the passcode in the invite link. So if you actually go in and you're creating your meeting, you can, and you want a passcode, you can have this turned on and it will embed the passcode into the link that the students click on. Require a passcode for participants joining by phone. Again, most of our students aren't going to be joining by phone, but if you want to, you can turn that on as well. Now, these last two security settings about the authenticated users need to be turned off. Those are for users that have accounts. Your students do not have accounts, so we need to make sure that that's turned off because they will never be able to make it into your meeting. So those are all the security settings, but it's not just the security that keeps us safe during our meetings, it's also when we schedule our meetings. So for example, we want the host video turned on so the students can see you as they're entering into the meetings. I like to start the meetings with the participants' video off. However, if you're trying to verify face to name as they're entering in your meeting, you might want to have that one turned on. And you'll know it's updated because it'll tell you up here in the green that they have updated. Audio type, I suggest both telephone and computer audio, just in case. Join before host, have that turned off. Now what that does is that does not allow students to enter your meeting until you start the meeting. If you have that turned on, students can go into your meeting before you even get there. So we want that turned off. Enable personal meeting ID. Again, that's up to you to turn it on or turn it off. Same thing with when scheduling the meeting, you can have that on or off. The personal meeting ID, again, is if you want to have your own room, that just stays there all the time. To me, it's not something we're going to do very often. Now, muting participants upon entry. I would go ahead and turn that on. You can change that on the go inside your meetings, and I'm going to show you how to do that. But when they get into your meeting, we want that turned on so that way they're muted when they come in. And then upcoming meeting reminder, that's up to you. That's to remind you when you have meetings, but your students will not get those. Continuing on with the security and how we run our meetings. So let's talk about the in-meeting part. Again, requiring the encryption for third party, keep that off, you don't really need it. The chat. The chat is a big thing. What I would do in your global settings is have it turned on and prevent the participants from saving the chat. And I'll talk a little bit more about the chat in the next couple settings. The reason we want this turned on is so that way if you do want to allow students to talk back and forth, it gives you the ability to turn it on in the meeting. If that is turned off, you will have no chat ability whatsoever, even if you want to during your meeting. So we want to make sure that's on in the global settings. And then again, I'll show you how to manipulate that during your meeting. Private chat should always be turned off. We do not want our students chit-chatting back and forth. Auto-saving chats. What that does, it automatically saves the chat so that you do not need to manually save the chat. So we want that turned on, especially if you're recording your meetings. Auto-saving chat, what that will do is that will allow you to save your meetings as you go. This cannot be changed because there's certain security that needs to be turned on. So for now, we'll keep it off, and I'll show you how you can make sure that those are saving. Sound notification when someone leaves or joins. For this one, we want to make sure that only you can hear the enter and out, because what'll happen is that if the sound plays, everyone in your meeting will hear it, not just you and your co-hosts. So I'm going to save that. When someone joins by phone, it asks to record their voice. That's up to you. So what'll happen is they'll dial the phone number that goes with the meeting. It'll say, please say your name. And when it joins the meeting, whatever the person joining your meeting says will automatically play that for you when they join the meeting. So if the person's name is Sam, it'll say, Sam has now joined the meeting, and it'll be audio. I like to keep that off. I don't see a reason to have that. File transfers we want off. We don't want you or your participants to send files to each other while they're chatting. Feedback to Zoom, that's up to you. At the very end of your meeting, it'll ask how your meeting went. It doesn't necessarily go to you. Display end of meeting experience survey. Again, it's up to you. It asks how the meeting went. It's either a thumbs up or a thumbs down for the students. Co-hosts you want to turn on in case you have aides or you have other teachers that you're going to be working with. So you want to make sure that gets turned on. Polling you will not be able to do because your accounts don't offer that. Let your tech coaches know, and we'll give you other ideas on how you can use polls with your students. Always show meeting control in the toolbar. We want to make sure we can see that toolbar as we're working. So we want to make sure that stays on. Show video Zoom windows during screen share. We want that turned on so we can see our students. And screen sharing we want on with host only. Again, you can change that on the fly, and I'll show you how to do that when we get there. Disable desktop screen share for users. We want to have that turned off. It only allows you to be able to do special things. So for our participants, we don't want that. Annotations, I highly recommend we turn that off. There's other whiteboards you can use and other ways to annotate. I wouldn't use the annotation in Zoom. For the whiteboard, again, same thing. I would have that turned off. There's other online whiteboards you can use. Remote control we want to have turned off. Non-verbal feedback. Those are the thumbs up and the thumbs down that you see at the bottom of each of the meetings. Same thing with the meeting reactions. It says go faster, go slower, thumbs up, thumbs down. We want to make sure we have that turned on. Allow remove participants to rejoin. If you have to dismiss a student from your class during your participation time, I would go ahead and turn that on so you can put them into the waiting room. And then if after a certain amount of time, if they behave, you can bring them back in. I've also seen in Zoom meetings where the class is doing an activity and the person who is quote unquote it, or the person who's supposed to be guessing, gets put into the waiting room and then brought back in to play the game. So that can remain on. Allow participants to rename themselves. Turn that on for now, and I'm going to show you when we get over to the live Zoom meeting how we can turn that off during the Zoom meeting. Hide participant profile pictures in a meeting. Turn that on. So there's been a lot of reports of like middle school students changing their picture to something inappropriate. When this is turned on, the kids' pictures will no longer show up. It will just say their name when they are muted, and that's what you want. So those are the basic meetings settings. Let's take a look at some of the advanced. Report participants to Zoom. You can report certain students to Zoom as an issue, but what Zoom looks at is not that whether or not they did something wrong. They look at how they can increase security to make sure it doesn't go wrong next time. So whether you turn it on or turn it off is up to you. Now, a breakout room is like when you split up your class and you put them into groups of 3, 4, or 5, or however you want to group them. A lot of teachers will be using it with their resource teachers or with their aides, so you might want to turn that on. And I would also check in to allow hosts to assign participants to breakout rooms when scheduling. That's a whole nother issue, and we'll make a video on how to do a breakout room, but that we want to make sure that stays on. Remote support off. Zoom doesn't have a great closed captioning, so we need that turned off. Saving the captions off. Language interpretation, again, off. The way that Zoom works, closed captioning and language interpretation, is they need to have a separate person doing it. It's in real time. It doesn't usually work. It doesn't work like a closed caption where it just shows them on the bottom. Far end camera control, again, you want to have that turned off. Virtual background. So I know a lot of you teachers like to have your virtual background behind you, and that's perfectly fine, but let's go ahead and turn it off for the students. We want to make sure that, and that's not necessarily for videos, but remember, if you have access to do it, so do your students. And I know a lot of times we'll have your students turning them on, turning them off, turning them on, so that's up to you. The allow use of videos for virtual background, maybe you have I think one of the defaults is the Aurora's Borealis behind you and fluctuating behind you, or there's one with the lake behind you, a river. So you can have the videos playing, but you can turn them off. I don't see a reason to have them going. Video filters is up to you. You want to go ahead and turn them on if you want. Again, that's up to you. Identify guest participants. All of your students are guest participants, so to put the word guest next to each of their names, we want that turned on. Auto answer in group chat, go ahead and turn that off. Only show default email when sending email invites, on or off, doesn't matter, it's up to you. We don't use Outlook, so that doesn't matter. Allow users to select stereo audio in their client settings, that's up to you. It doesn't do anything if you turn it on or turn it off. Allow users to select original sound, again, same thing, on or off, doesn't matter, it's up to you. Now, where are your meetings taking place? So if they're calling in on a phone, it will give them certain phone numbers to call. So you can actually give them an Australian phone number to call, or I don't know why I have Canada on there, but we'll go and uncheck it. We only really need the United States ones. Show a join from browser link. We need that turned on. Most of our students are joining from a browser link, so that definitely needs to be turned on. Live streaming for you should be turned off completely. You should not be live streaming to Facebook or YouTube or anything else. Email notifications, you guys don't have cloud recording, so don't worry about it. On or off won't make a difference. You can get an email, so if you have students that join before your meeting and they're just sitting there waiting for you, you can get an email that tells you that your students are waiting for you. But they're not in the meeting, so let's make sure we're clear on that. That just tells you that they're waiting for you to start the meeting. When a meeting is canceled, you can get an email. When an alternative host is set or removed, you can get an email. Again, that one doesn't matter one way or another. When someone schedules a meeting for a host, so if someone schedules you for a meeting, you can have that turned on. And when the cloud recording is going to be permanently deleted, again, you can turn that on or turn it off. It's up to you. You don't have cloud recording. Other than that, everything else is, you can just leave it as is. None of that really matters for you. So those are all your settings inside of Zoom and kind of how you should manipulate them either on or off. So now let's take a look at Zoom in meeting so you can see how you can manipulate those settings on the fly. Alright, so you can see I'm already in my meeting and I'm going to be taking a look at all the settings down at the bottom. But before I start, here's the important one. I'm going to go ahead and stop my video. And if you notice, my picture's no longer there. It's my name, and that's the way I want it. I want my name to be there. Let's take a look at this first button, which is security. We want to make sure that lock meeting is unchecked, enable waiting room is checked, share screen is unchecked, chat is turned on, renaming themselves is turned on, and unmuting themselves is turned off. Those are going to be the important ones, and I'll talk about how we can do that back and forth as we get my student in. And then if you ever need to report a student, you click on report, and it will tell you what you want to report and what the problem was. Now, under participants, this brings us up our participant window. Here's those icons that students can check: yes, no, go slower, go faster. But the big ones are under this more menu, where we can ask students, all of them, to unmute. Now, I hope you never do that. If you have a class of 30, try to get 30 people all talking to each other at the same time. That's dangerous. And not only that, but they won't be able to hear each other. So I keep that one turned off. Mute participants upon entry, I have it turned on. So when they enter your meeting, they're muted. Allow participants to mute themselves. If you notice, I have that turned off, and I'll show you in a little bit with my student. They won't be able to do anything. They'll be stuck. You'll see that they can't unmute. And that includes using the space bar as a shortcut. I know that's been a big issue as well. It locks it in. They can't do it. Playing a sound when they join, that's a big one as well, because that allows us to know when kids are coming in and coming out. To start the meeting, I'm going to allow them to rename themselves, and then at some point I'm going to have them turn it off. That way they can't rename themselves during the meeting. Lock the meeting, again, I'm going to have that turned off, but you may have a reason to lock the meeting. That's up to you. And then I'm going to have enabled the waiting room. So what you're going to notice is when my student comes in, you'll be able to hear the noise that says, hey, we're in. So you heard them. Here's the student, iPad 5 guest. Now I'm going to send them a message. Please log off and rename yourself before entering. And I'm going to put the student version up here at the same time, so you'll be able to see that as well. The student's now gotten the notice, and now they can see the message. And so they can't message you back, but here's what they can do. They can log off. You'll see them disappear, and they can rejoin using their proper name. I'm going to just call them, let's call this one Goofy Fido. And so now when they join, you'll see them in the top. Now they have their appropriate name, and now I can admit them either here or over here into the meeting. And there we go, there's the student. I'm going to go ahead and keep the audio off, and I'm going to stop the video. So again, you can see there's no picture for Fido, it's just his name. Now, if I wanted to, I could allow him to unmute themselves by doing this. So if I do that and I hit that button, they now have the ability to unmute or mute themselves. But I don't want them to do that. I want that turned off. Now here's the beauty part about Zoom, is that if I do have a student who just refuses to turn off their video, they just won't do it, I can come in and I can tell them to stop their video. It will automatically stop their video, and when they go to start it up, it will not allow them. It will disable it until you go back and ask them to do it again. So now I can say, ask to start video, and now it's saying the host has asked you to start your video. So now I can do that, and then there's the video. And then I'll go ahead and stop my video. So you have control. Don't think that you can't control what's going on. You have the ultimate control. So that's in the participants. In the chat, it's a little bit different. In the chat, over here in the 3 dots, I can turn it off to no one, host only, or everyone publicly. So right now on the iPad, if I'm the student and I say, hello everyone, and I send that in, I have posted that and everyone can see it. But if I go to host only, now what will happen is when the student goes to talk, what you'll notice is it changes it to me privately. Or I can turn it off altogether and the student, all they see is chat disabled. I can do that as I'm working with my class. Hey, all right, everyone, I want you to tell me what was your favorite thing to do over the weekend. Go. And the beauty part, because they started in the waiting room, you can tell who's saying their answers and who isn't. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, but you know what? I've got 40 kids in my junior high classroom. How can I take the time to make sure this is happening? Start your meetings a little bit early. So if you have a meeting scheduled at 9 o'clock, open up your waiting room about 8:50, start letting kids in, muted, and with their video off. But the idea is that you know who's in your class. Again, you need to make sure that they're renaming themselves. That has to happen. So the chat, again, you can do on the fly. Okay, so now they're answering. They're going to answer to everyone. I went camping. And there we go. Okay, everyone's answered. Now I've turned it off. No one else can chat. No one else can do anything else. Inside that chat room, they are stuck. So that's the chat restrictions. Now, if I have a student who just is not behaving, or maybe I'm playing a game and I want to put them in the waiting room, I can go ahead and put them in the waiting room. And you'll notice over on the iPad, they go over to the waiting room and now they have to wait until I bring them back in. Now they can't always leave the meeting, and now he's back in. They can always leave the meeting, but you have that ability to do that. Here's where you'd ask them to start their video. Never make them a host or a co-host. And here's where I can rename them. So if I notice that a kid still didn't change the right name, or they changed it to someone I don't know who it is, I can force the rename, and I can rename them myself. But it really is up to the students to do that. If I want to kick them out of the meeting altogether, no waiting room, no nothing, I'm going to remove them, and I'm going to say okay. And now they're out of the meeting completely. So that's on the iPad. Again, more controls, the share screen, but really that little arrow that allows where you can change it to the participants. Just be careful because they'll start to kick each other off. I don't know if I would trust them to do that. And remember, you have the ability to display your desktop or your iPhone or iPad via AirPlay, or if you have your phone charger via cable. Again, polling you won't have. If you're doing it on a desktop or a laptop, make sure you're recording, then move them over to move the recording over to your Google Drive. There's a video on our YouTube channel where you can do that. Breakout rooms is a whole nother issue. We'll talk about that in another video. And then our reactions. This is where we can actually say good job, thumbs up, give them a heart because you love what they said, crying face, their oh no face, and then a party. So those are the settings in Zoom while you're working. And so again, those are all on the fly. So as you work, turn them on, turn them off. And it takes practice. Practice with your colleagues or practice with a small group in your class, and you'll get it down. But remember, don't think you don't have control, because you really, really do. But the last setting we want to make sure that we hit is that in button, and make sure you in that meeting for all. That shuts off the meeting, and none of the students can come back in or stay in. They're out. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that button now. The meeting is closed. Now just some general tips on how to teach online. And again, these are guidelines. This is not solid for everyone, but The first one is don't make the students turn on their camera. Obviously, at some point you're going to need to, but don't feel like they have to have them on all the time. Do not comment on the students' surroundings. Just keep in mind you never know what their situation is. Use the mute all feature, which is what I showed you earlier. Create permanent breakout groups. At some point we'll make a video on how to do breakout groups, but keep them solid for a while so the kids can get used to each other. Don't lecture or do anything more than about 20 minutes in your mini lessons. Do your lesson, stop, let them work, and then bring them back. Using some form of polls or forms are great for gathering info. Let the students know what the end goal is from every session, so at the end of the session you will be able to use the chat feature. Again, you have control over it. Turn it on and turn it off. And then finally, remember, whenever you're working in distance learning, put yourself in your student's shoes. I hope this helps you out. Have a great day.